Oops. Good evening. Welcome to GLBT Issues in Literature. I'm Rachel Hansen, and I am, let's see, kind of just getting into the groove tonight. How's everybody doing? Now, I usually try to be at least like a little professional looking when I start. This is one time when I will acknowledge what I look like here on camera. And starting to warm up where I'm at. My daughters and I went for a post dinner walk. And gosh, I didn't realize quite how out of shape I had become over the winter. Because I really just had it in me to like sit for a while after the walk. To kind of just take it easy. But then it was bedtime. Then so here I am just in my black t-shirt. But now talking about kids, of course, in the module this week, we are still talking about kids. But very specifically, older kids. Now, if you're somebody who's joining us and you have babies and toddlers, first of all, my heart goes out to you. It's a rough stage, the baby and toddler stage. But I say that like it maybe gets easier as they get older. And it doesn't. The challenge is just different as they get older. And before we dive into, our readings for this week, there's a story that I wanted to share just about kind of my own parenting journey because my kids are getting a little bit older, definitely past the babies and toddlers stage. Now, my middle daughter was diagnosed with autism about 3 years ago. And this year has been really hard. And like this year being this academic year has been somewhat challenging. And one thing that's been really helpful for her that we're starting in this new calendar year is to start school a little bit later than her peers, which has been really helpful. But she was playing a video game a few mornings ago. And I, for my day job, had a 9 a.m. meeting. And so she was playing Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life, which is just honestly this real cute little farming game. It's pretty adorable. It has a very soothing soundtrack, which is good for her. Then she's not getting real amped up before her school day. But not on this morning. On this morning, she was very convinced that she had missed an event that she needed to trigger getting a horse in this game. And because I wasn't available, right, I was working, she opted instead to start a whole new game in the hopes of triggering this event to get the horse. But the first animal that you get in the game is a dog. Ada's dog is named Depression. Now, thankfully, my meeting ended, and we were able to do a little bit of relationship repair before she went to school, and she had a really good day. Although as I'm sharing this tale now, I'm realizing I am honestly still not sure if she got the horse. So I guess we'll have to I'll have to ask and report back next week. Uh, but really, all of these experiences that we have, whether it's really parent to child or really in any type of a relationship, the goal, I think, and what I'll be building on a little bit more here together in the next 30 minutes or so, is to really just do well enough to get another chance tomorrow. Because it's presence as often as possible, and caring about what the person you love cares about, even if it maybe feels a little silly to you. That's really the deal here. Now, in chapter 8 of All Boys Aren't Blue, right, we have George Johnson, who is talking about this dynamic in his family, right, where he and his brother that we read about throughout the memoir are kind of his dad's second set of kids, right? He has 2 older half siblings, and kind of the mismatch of personalities that seemed to be present in their home. And his dad not really knowing what to do with him. But really, love is love. And I know that that sounds corny and maybe at this point even a little dated. But it is still remains a true fact. And what George says is, and I quote, "I got bigotry everywhere else. My father made sure I at least didn't get it at home by using the tools he had, the best he knew how." And so really his father is taking this opportunity, right, to do well enough to have that second chance tomorrow. And so really, as we're thinking about this, I would invite you to spend a little bit of time just thinking about how we approach our relationships, and not just the parenting ones. Right, like rather than starting again with a whole new group of people, like my daughter and her game, or George Johnson's father with his family, why not approach every day with the attitude that if you do well enough, you're going to get a second chance tomorrow? Because well enough does not demand perfection. Now, of course, it does, I think, require some slowness, some thoughtfulness, but also the ability to repair in a relationship. Are we going to get the opportunity to repair every time? Well, no, we're not. But as often as we can take those opportunities, actually, I think it would be more accurate for me to say, as often as we get those opportunities, we need to take them. Because that really is a very productive path towards healing. Now, kind of moving into Zami, a new spelling of my name, we start to see what happens with Audrey as a young adult when she doesn't get, when her parents don't do well enough to earn another chance. the next day, right? Now, chapters 16 and 17 of this book are, at least in my opinion, really relatively benign in the scheme of things. Right, and I would say generally typical of just being newly on your own as a young adult. Right, she talks about spending more time with her friends than maybe is prudent. She does really poorly in German and in trigonometry. And it doesn't necessarily occur to her that it's because she's spending so much time with her friends. Which, I mean, who among us hasn't done that? I certainly have. And then also, kind of that last bit, which is rough. Are your friends making questionable choices about their life partners? But the other thing, and this might say more about me, honestly, than it does about her. Say more about me as a reader. At the heart of what she writes, I also feel kind of just this level of loneliness. Having friends around, but not fully understanding them or feeling like she belongs with them. And I think I might have to think this just for my own sanity. So, like, you should let me know if you have had a similar experience. But I think that for those of us who grew up in relatively high control environments, family environments, that feeling is a familiar one. It can be really difficult to feel like you belong in these spaces when a feeling of belonging is somewhat foreign to us. Now, Audrey does what a lot of young adults do, and she makes a decision to leave for a new place. Now, her end goal is to leave for Mexico, but she can't leave immediately from New York City to someplace in Mexico. So she goes to a relatively benign place here in the middle, Stamford, Connecticut, where she gets a job and begins to work. And we'll talk more about this in coming weeks. Now, she was somewhat lonely there too, but it was a more productive form of loneliness that reminded her of her ultimate goal. Now, this is bringing us to our journal article of the week, which is entitled Family Acceptance at Adolescents and the Health of LGBT Young Adults, which was published in 2010 in the Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Nursing. So a bit of a departure, right, from our usual social science fare, but is one that, I mean, it's a hefty read for sure, but helpful if you can get through it. Now, the authors of this article really touch on something that I think is so important for us to just incorporate into our lives, which is that presence rather than perfection is what most strongly shapes young people's long-term well-being. And so that even when parents don't fully understand their children's identities, consistent care and an absence of hostility can act as a protective force. And when I read that, and even as I'm speaking it out loud now, what a low bar right? Consistent care and an absence of hostility, like, especially as a parent, right? Um, that should be really like the lowest bar that you're trying to clear. Um, you made the kids. So consistent care really is your responsibility. Um, and then when I consider uh, what it means really to have an absence of hostility, like that doesn't necessarily immediately spring to mind for me the idea of, right, like rolling out the red carpet and spoiling your kids. Um, that just means maybe like kind of wanting to hang around them a little bit, and thinking that they're all right. And hopefully we do think more of our kids, but also other people that we choose to be in community with, right? Um, that we do want to be happy and excited and interested in what our friends and our loved ones are up to. Um, yeah, I just, words fail me, honestly, with just thinking about, frankly, how low the bar is to set young people up for long term well being. Um, but then that also, as we're thinking about, right, George Johnson and Audre Lorde in their time growing up, um, we can see both with George Johnson um, what it meant for him to have an imperfect but meaningful experience. Right, his home was not a place of harm for him. And we know from these last few weeks of talking that the absolute opposite is true for Audre Lorde. Um, that her home was a harmful place for her. And so that venturing out into adulthood, we can kind of see her movements, right? From city to city, and relationship to relationship, really feels a little bit more like restlessness. Um, and restlessness in a sense that she's really trying to find safety that will allow her to become her full self. Um, and of course, this article and this whole module, the focus is on kind of like more adult to child relationships. But I think that what we're talking about here um, is really applicable to any relationship that we choose to be in. And then an absence of hostility is, again, kind of the lowest bar that you could hope to clear to have a helpful and fulfilling relationship. So, kind of a short week this week. And by short week, I mean, a shorter lecture than normal. But I just want to thank you for spending your time, excuse me, with me. Either this evening or whenever you are choosing to watch this. Now, I remember last week looking at the dates and sharing the next time that I was going to see you, and getting the dates completely wrong because I was somehow a week ahead. So I'm not really sure how that happened because I'm not usually running ahead. But, of course, today is Wednesday, March 11th. So I will see you in your inboxes this coming Monday, March 16th. of course, the module is scheduled to send out at 5 a.m. And then I will see you back here for the talk about our next module next Wednesday, March 18th at 7:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. So until then, stay well, and I will see you in just a few days.